I don't know if you've heard of Brian Johnson.
I have,
It seems like you've probably been measuring nighttime erections longer than he has.
but he can't claim that by following his regimen you will have the penis of a 20-year-old. That's a bit too much. On the other hand, the fact that he has so many nocturnal erections is an indicator of good cardiovascular health. A healthy man in that age category should be having 3 nocturnal erections per night, and he should spend 70 minutes erect to be average. What do men want with testosterone replacement therapy? In general, they want two things. I'm a man my age, I'm 72. I want to know that I'm not losing muscle, or ideally, because I'm going to gain muscle with testosterone. And then I want to know about my nocturnal erections.
So the ring not only tracks and measures things for your health, it gives you the data back, but it's also used as a pleasurable sex toy.
I think people should try to have an orgasm a day. I think an orgasm a day probably keeps the doctor away.
What is some of the data that you've seen from it that has surprised you the most?
The data that surprised me the most is actually how
Dr. Justin, after decades in emergency medicine, what inspired you to focus specifically on erectile health?
well, by background, in just emergency medicine, I also founded the second oldest telemedicine company in the United States a long time ago. It's called SwiftMD. It's been sold, but it was founded around the same time as Teladoc, which still goes on and many people are familiar with. And that got me interested in remote patient management technology. What can people do at home to manage and control their health without having to go to doctors? And that led to an interest in sensor technologies. We live in this incredible age of healthcare wearables, smartwatches, smart rings, and there's a gap, which is sex. And sex is probably more interesting, certainly to men, than what their blood pressure is or how many steps they took yesterday. So about 4 years ago, a urology professor at the University of Utah, Dr. James Hotaling, challenged me to come up with a way of counting the number of nocturnal erections that men have. And I said, what the heck for? And we all know about morning wood, and we laugh about morning wood. But I was unaware, and he informed me that um, nocturnal erections are a leading indicator of someone's cardiovascular health. And that really took me aback, because in medicine, we treat associations. We rarely treat leading indicators. Leading indicators are predictive. So high blood pressure is associated with heart attack. Elevated lipoproteins are associated with atherosclerosis. But if my if my cholesterol goes up 40 points, what does it mean? It doesn't predict that I'm going to have a heart attack. Same thing with blood pressure. My blood pressure goes from, say, systolic 130 to 150. That's, well, I'm not going to say it's alarming, but it could be telling me something, but it's not predictive. But if a man's nocturnal erections go down by 50%, the number, that man has a 50% chance of having a heart attack in the next 2 or 3 years. And that's profound.
Wow.
So I was unaware of this, and I think even today, most men and doctors remain unaware of the significance of the number of nocturnal erections as a predictor, a leading indicator of man's cardiovascular health. But this doctor, like most straight doctors, is what I call a cock ring virgin, and I'm not. I'm fortunate to be married to a woman for 37 years who really enjoys sex toys. So I'm quite familiar with cock rings. Although I don't like calling them that, because it kind of puts them in the category of a sex toy rather than something that's actually medically valuable. But my thought was, hey, well, why limit ourselves to counting the number of nocturnal erections? Let's look at all erections. Because what do men care more about? The ones they have when they're sleeping, or the ones they have when they're trying to have sex? They are having sex. So my thought was to embed sensors into what I prefer to call an erection ring. And that's the backstory, going back about 3 or 4 years.
You touched on the connection between cardiovascular functioning and erectile health. Can you go a little bit deeper into that? Is there a direct correlation, meaning that the stats that you provided, is that a sure way to know? The
Well, the urologists call the penis the canary in the coal mine of cardiovascular health. So is it a sure way? Well, nothing in medicine is sure, but if a man has an insufficient number of nocturnal erections, both in number, duration, and firmness, it's highly likely that man has a cardiovascular problem. So there are other reasons. It could be medication side effects or other things that can impact the health of the penis, and not necessarily involve health of the heart. But in general, yeah, there are two organs in the body that are particularly sensitive to decreased blood flow, and those are the retina and the penis. I suspect the clitoris as well too. We are developing a monitor for the health of the clitoris as well. Now it's hard to go to an ophthalmologist and get a retinogram. It's easy for a man to put on a wearable overnight and assess the health, assess his cardiovascular health by looking at his nocturnal. So when I first came up with this technology, working prototype a little bit, 2.5, 3 years ago, I was frankly thrilled to see that I had 3 to 4 nocturnal erections per night, because it meant that even though at that time I was 70 years old, it meant it was highly likely that I was in decent cardiovascular health. Whereas if I had 2 or 1, that would have been alarming.
Now,
So
does it make a difference how long those erections last?
yeah, well, that's not been established, but it looks to us, looking at, because we've documented almost 85,000 erections, it looks like the duration is significant. And if a man uses our device, he now can compare himself to hundreds and hundreds of other men in his age group. So I can, I'm 72. I can compare myself to men in the 65 to 75 range and say, gee, a healthy man in that age category should be having 3 nocturnal erections per night, and he should spend 70 minutes erect to be average. So we all want to be above average, of course, because we're guys, we're competitive. So yeah, it's indicative. So what's the data has shown though is that what the doctors thought was the leading cause of erectile dysfunction is not the leading cause, and that's been really interesting as well. So if you don't mind my continuing, the heart's a pump. The doctors are thinking, gee, well, if men have angina, they've had a heart attack, they have bad atherosclerosis, they have congestive heart failure, the pump's not working well, they're not going to get enough blood into their penis. Then you have the arteries that come out of the heart, and they narrow with atherosclerosis, with heart in the arteries. You're not going to get blood into the penis. You're going to have erectile dysfunction. But that's not the case for the majority of men. So one of the mistakes that we doctors make commonly is we project from the sickest people onto the general population. So the academic urologists are seeing men in their departments who struggle to get an erection or can't get an erection. And that's dysfunction. But that's only about 10 to 15% of men. The vast majority of men who are being labeled with erectile dysfunction get erections and they lose it. And why is that? So if it's not, the doctors were thinking that it was pretty much all going to be what we call in medicine left side heart failure. I mean, the pump's not working, or the arteries aren't working. But if the incidence of erectile dysfunction goes up 10% per decade after age 45, thinking of the doctors, me too, was that the number of nocturnal erections will go down as the incidence goes up. The firmness of nocturnal erections will go down. And most importantly, the firmness of sex erections will go down. And again, that's true for the men who have cardiac disease, bad hypertension, bad diabetes. But if you exclude those men, what we see is the firmness of sex erections, number of nocturnals, remains relatively constant until the late 60s, early 70s, and then tapers. It doesn't taper enough that the men could not enjoy penetrative or solo sex, have a decent hard-on, so to speak. So what's going on? Why are men reporting more ED, but yet, at least certainly at night, they're getting good erections? And that's where data is really valuable, because with data, you begin to sort out what the cause is. And the causes range from a lack of confidence, issues with their partners, money worse.
Testosterone.
Yeah, testosterone. Then there's testosterone will be a problem. Medications. We doctors prescribe 2 categories of medications that interfere with erectile function, women as well. But they are the antihypertensives, antidepressants, and there's alcohol, recreational drugs, other factors that enter into it. But once you have data, you can start to figure out what the cause is, and that's the profound value of what we're doing. The biohackers like to say, track it to hack it. Well, you can't track it unless you have a tool for tracking it.
Right. I want to summarize a little bit. You spoke about how people started measuring at night, but part of what your aha moment was, you want to do it all the time. You want to also measure in the day. So you have this ring, you've FirmTech, which is what you invented, FirmTech device. And are you proposing that men wear it 24/7? That's my
No,
first
no,
question. And
no.
then, so then they have the data, and let's say that they do have ED. They're able to learn this from wearing this device and getting the data back. So they can learn how healthy they are or where they might need support. And then once they have that data, they can take it to their doctor and then kind of pinpoint where the actual issue is and go from there.
Yeah, I don't think I mean, there are people who wear it 24/7.
Mhm.
I don't know why they do it. I think from talking to the customers, they seem to be, oh, most of them are gay men who are very, very sexually active, and they have it on just because they want to be able to record their data. But no, it can be worn during, it can be worn overnight. Should be worn overnight. Certainly for men over the age of 45, 50 who are at risk for cardiovascular disease, or it can be worn during sex. And wearing it during sex actually allow a man to see what the impact are of alcohol, recreational drugs, medications. People can use this device to say, gee, I'm taking this antihypertensive, but look at its impact upon my erections. Maybe I want to switch to a different medication. Maybe I want a different dose. The same thing with, you mentioned testosterone therapy before. There are two research papers going on right now utilizing testosterone therapy, utilizing our device in the management of testosterone therapy. But what's the right dose? So with testosterone therapy right now for men, the the doctors ask questions that are subjective. They're not objective. And those questions are, gee, how's your libido? How's your sleep? How's your energy? And let's get a blood test and see where you are in comparison to an average man of your age. Well, those are subjective questions: sleep, libido, energy. I mean, Jessica, I can assure you right now, certain right now, that if you wrote me a check for $100,000 right now, I'm sleeping really well tonight. My libido is going to be great, and my energy is going to be great for the next week or so. Probably vice versa too. But that's the problem with subjective factors. They don't really get at objectively at what's going on.
Mm.
Objectively, what do men want with testosterone replacement therapy? In general, they want two things. I'm a man my age, I'm 72. I want to know that I'm not losing muscle, or ideally, because I'm going to gain muscle from testosterone. And then I want to know about my nocturnal erections. So now I can treat that. I can initiate therapy objectively. I can say, okay, here, Elliot, I'll pick up myself, because actually it's a true story. Okay, so that goes back a couple of years. I take testosterone. My testosterone is 320, which is borderline low. But I don't technically have ED. I'm having sex pretty much every day, and I'm fairly fit. I asked my advisory board of urologists, what do you think is going to happen if I take testosterone? And they're used to prescribing things on the basis of subjective symptoms. They say, okay, well, how's your energy? How's sleep? Okay, you should sleep better. You should have your nocturnal should last longer and be harder. And that didn't happen.
Hmm.
That had no impact on my nocturnal erection. So I went from 320 up to as high as 1200. I now keep my level around 600. But what did happen was that I put a tape measure around my biceps, my pectoral muscles, and my upper body strength increased by almost 10% in 6 weeks. And then it plateaued. So going from 600 to 1200 had no difference. So and I have patients, and we've also had customers who utilize the data from the tech ring that way as well too. They can now say objectively, what's the right dose for me, because we're all different. So what the doctors do is they treat everyone right now as if they're pretty much one size fits all. Man has ED, take a PD-5 medication, take Viagra, take Cialis. Well, what's the right dose? It's not how we treat blood pressure. Right now, Jessica, I mean, you're obviously younger than me. You're a female, so we're different genders, different ages, different health. And if we went to a doctor and said, "Gee, when I work out, my pulse is irregular," and the doctor said to you, Jessica, "Yeah, Jessica, that's interesting. Here, take this pill and come back in 3 months," you would say, well, "What the heck is this, doctor? You got a blood pressure cuff in the office? You have an electrocardiogram? You could take some blood tests." But that's how men are being prescribed Viagra and Cialis. Hey, take a pill, come back in 3 months without any objectivity. So
Mhm.
now men can actually, with our device, they can say, what's the right dose of Cialis for me? Is it 5? Is it 10? Is it 20? Do I even need it at all? If a man is having three or more nocturnal erections per night, the Cialis is going to treat a placebo. It's going to be a placebo effect. He doesn't really, doesn't really need it. And so the same thing with testosterone. You know, my doctor here would just give me the same dose. He wouldn't be looking at, on basis of my age and my number, as opposed to, gee, Elliot, how are your nocturnals and how's your muscle? So this device is revolutionary. It's giving men data that's objective and personal, and that should transform the way in which urologists diagnose and manage ED.
Mm. What is some of the data that you've seen from it that has surprised you the most?
The data that surprised me the most is actually how
Okay, quick side note. I have to share this with you. Whenever I'm on the go or I'm getting that I need something but don't know what feeling between meals, I just pop a few spirulina tablets from Energy Bits. Honestly, they have saved me so many times. They give me clean energy and I feel good for hours. No crash, no junk. What I love is that each little tablet is just one ingredient, 1 calorie, and packed with 40 vitamins and minerals. It's wild. People even use them to support their skin and weight goals too, which is a nice bonus. So if you want something quick, clean, and kind of magical, check them out. You can go to energybits.com and use the code HEALWITHIN for 20% off. That's energybits.com and code HEALWITHIN at checkout to receive 20% off your entire order. All right, back to the episode.
something I alluded to a moment ago, which is that older men are just as hard as younger men. That's really interesting,
Yeah.
because it's not what we would expect. Um, there's very little difference in not. I mean, between ages of like the late 20s, the late 60s, the number of nocturnal erections, their firmness, durations, etc., remains relatively constant for the vast majority of men. And I'm excluding men with significant heart disease, again, diabetes, hypertension. But most, even men at my age, and all, it's pretty common for men, women too, as they get older to develop mild hypertension or mild diabetes. Even those men are remaining they are basically just as hard at night as they were that been 30, 40 years younger than that. And that's been very, very, very surprising. And the other
Very
thing
interesting.
that's been interesting is realizing that men's sexual health or sexual norms start to deteriorate way before women. So, we tend to think, oh, the sexual dysfunction is something that occurs to women in menopause, and it really doesn't. I mean, it does. It occurs in menopause because of the loss of testosterone, and I'm confident that for women, testosterone replacement therapy will become the norm. The 3 or 4 years. But for men, the deterioration in sexual performance starts, it starts really in the late 20s, and there's been no attention paid to this whatsoever. So what is this deterioration? How is it characterized? Well, a man who's a lad, is 14, can have 7 or 8 orgasms a day. By the time he's in his late 20s, he's good for about half of that number, and just it deteriorates from there. Also, and then the time between climaxes for men deteriorates as well too. This doesn't happen to women. I mean, in
I
some
feel
sense,
like I feel like those two data points that you just shared don't really coincide because if they pretty much if older men have the same type of erectile health all through their late 20s all through the rest of their life mostly, but also you said that in their late 20s they start to not have as high of they can't perform as much
yeah.
as they
Well,
can in their
I was talking about their firmness, but now not deteriorating. But what does deteriorate is the time between climaxes and the number of climaxes that they can experience, and also the time which it takes for their erection to go down. So
Okay.
and no one knows why. No, there's been no research looking at any of those things. But what the data does show is that all men can improve their performance with an erection ring. Ours, of course, but anyway, but even the cheap ones in the sex toy stores will do. And that's a mind problem for a lot of men. So let's compare that to vibrators. So in my lifetime, go back to the say the 70s, early 80s when vibrators started to become commercialized for women. There was a concern about vibrator addiction and vibrator dependency. And that's not the case. Vibrators for women are not now mainstream, and it addresses it's been an enormous boon to women. But erection rings have remained sort of a taboo area for men, and
Why is that?
I think it's male pride. Well, I think one I think it's simply manufacturing design. I mean, the original vibrators for women were basically an electric toothbrush, and now there are for all the complaining that women do appropriately about they don't get enough attention when it comes to healthcare, and they don't. But when it comes to sex toys, they rule. If there are so many variants of vibrators, forms, textures, shapes, modalities, etc. But rings for men are made the same stupid way they made for the last 150 years. They're these hard silicone rings. They pinch, they're uncomfortable. The recommended guidance is don't wear them more than 20, 30 minutes because they cut out the circulation. So, but actually all men would benefit from erection rings. But they have a pride resistance. So one of the jokes we have at the American Urology Association convention or International Society of Sexual Medicine conventions is you can tell the difference between a gay man and a straight man, a doctor that is, with one question. Do you use an erection ring, cock ring? And the gay doctors look at you like you're an idiot. Like, yeah, of course I do. Like last night, what's wrong with you? And the straight doctor's like, well, it's like male pride. Oh, I don't need that thing. Maybe my patients will need it. Well, actually, it's not about need, it's about want. Any man who wants to speak crudely, rock harder, last longer, have more intense orgasm, be more confident, have their partner be more confident in them. A ring is the answer. Any man can prove this to himself any time because this gets at something I mentioned before about the deterioration in male performance really, really early on. Every erection ends with blood leaving the penis. Every erection ends with venous leak, and it gets worse as we get older, as the smooth muscle around our veins gets weaker and our veins get stiffer. If I sit on an airplane for 8 hours, my ankles, my hands might get a little bit swollen, rings get tight, socks get a little bit tight. That didn't happen to me when I was 20 years old, 25 years old, or 30 years old. Mm. So the impact of the penis is blood leaves. If these smooth muscles are not constricting, blood is leaving the penis faster. And the answer for all men is a ring if they can just open their minds to it.
So the ring not only tracks and measures things for your health, it gives you the data back, but it's also used as a pleasurable sex toy.
Yeah, it's men. I wish men would not see it as a crutch or something just for gay guys or fetish guys, but would see it as an enhancer, just the way women see the vibrators. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So by putting light pressure on the veins around the outside of the penis, it helps to retain blood in the penis. So there are 2 papers. They're going to be published eventually. I've seen the data though, showing that our ring is equivalent to 10 milligrams of tadalafil. Well, that's tadalafil dialysis. That's the most commonly prescribed PD-5 medication, erection medication in the world. And so the ring is actually a non-pharmacologic solution to a really common problem, which is that men's erections, all erections, end with blood leaving the penis. If you want to last longer, if you want to delay that time, put a ring on it. So if a man gets rock hard and then does nothing, no stimulation, that erection will go down in 25 to 35 seconds. If a man puts a ring on it, that erection is going to last over 2 minutes. If a man puts a ring on it and takes a pill, his erection is going to last with 3 or 4 minutes before it fades, no stimulation. So the takeaway really for all men, our research, is put a ring on it. You want to last longer, be more confident, have more intense orgasm, put a ring on it. The data is really valuable too, especially for older men who are at risk for heart disease.
What's something that you wish that more partners understood about erectile health and male sexual performance?
That's a great question. Um, One that it's not what that most of the time it's just a problem. It's not dysfunction. If a man, the key thing and women are more sensitive to their men's health and more active about their men's health than the men will be. I really think if things are going to change for men, it's something that's going to have to be because their partners take the lead or support them. So the key question is your man struggling to get an erection, can't attain an erection? Is that his problem? Or is his problem he gets an erection and then loses it? Because if it's the former, if a man can attain erection, that that really requires one, data, and then seeing a cardiologist, urologist. So if a man, and I'm going to take two extremes without utilizing our technology, if your man can't get it up, and he has 3 nocturnal erections per night, it's a psychological problem or problem in the relationship. But if that man has 2 or less nocturnal erections per night, maybe the problem is not in the relationship. Maybe this is not something you can talk through with better communication. That man is more likely than not has a cardiovascular problem and/or a medication-related, side effect. So the ring can really help people sort out what the issues are. And I really been recommending the ring to sexologists and therapists for that reason as well too, because if you're treating something as a couple disorder when it's actually a physical disorder, you could be doing harm to that relationship. And so getting the data is important. I think that people need to start to see that ED is solvable for most people, because for the men who do get erections and lose it, it's not dysfunction. It's just a problem. So what is it? Is it an issue of communication? Is it an issue of alcohol, et cetera? So the data can really help people sort things out. And I want people to know that there's now a way of figuring out what the problem is objectively.
That's a really great way to gauge it, just from like a starting point. If you're having 3 or more erections during nighttime, then it's more of a relationship. So you need to talk to your partner. And if it's less than 3, then it's more medical, to go to your doctor. That's really great. So basically, by using this and tracking this, you can look at other areas of your life and improve other areas of your life from this data.
Yeah, and obviously it's important for sorry about that. It's important for men to know where they stand. I really think that I think what we're doing right now will become a standard of care. That in the future, men who are 45, 50 years of age who go to their doctor for an annual physical, they're going to want just the way they expect and should expect: a blood pressure, electrocardiogram, liver proteins, blood panels, etc. Their sexual health should be assessed as well too, especially as sexual health as an indication of the cardiovascular health.
Mm. I don't know if you've heard of Brian Johnson.
I have.
It seems like you've probably been measuring nighttime erections longer than he has.
Probably, but he's using a different device. The company called the Atom. Their device, it's a good device. But their device is a little bit more limited in that their device only counts nocturnal erections, measures the duration of firmness. Our device can also be worn during sex. So we're getting that additional data point, and our device can also enhance someone's performance during sex. But Brian's points makes a claim though that I don't think is totally correct. Brian claims that because he has X number of nocturnal erections, I forget what it is, 4 or 5 nocturnal erections per night, that he's in the same health as his son who's in his early 20s, probably does have 4 or 5 nocturnal erections per night. But nocturnal erections are as I said before, they actually remain pretty constant throughout life. So for most men. So what really makes, if you will, a penis younger is the ability to have climaxes very close together, ability to have multiple climaxes within a day, that you stay hard longer without stimulation, like a younger man. And those are really the things that distinguish a younger. So I think, look, the guy, I'm certain that Brian Johnson is in spectacular health and looking at him. I'm in decent condition, but he can't claim that by following his regimen, you will have the penis of a 20-year-old. That's a bit too much. On the other hand, the fact that he has so many nocturnal erections is an indicator of good cardiovascular health.
If there's one message that you want listeners to take away when it comes to men's health, what would that be?
Put a ring on it. Put a ring on to get data get the vital signs of every guy's most vital organ, because every man and every woman who cares about men knows that men mentally are only as good as the last couple of erections. That's, get your data, especially if you're over the age of 45, 50, just the way you would get other health data. And the other is a ring will enhance the performance and pleasure of any man. Don't see it as something shameful. It's just for guys who have a
Something else that I wanted to make sure I asked you about this, because there may be some people listening that think that can't be safe. I mean, we have all these tracking, like we're always holding a phone or we're staring at screens and there's Wi-Fi and there's 5G and radiation. Is it really safe to have something that's tracking, your genital, like something on your member as a man? Is that going to cause anything long term? Is that safe?
That's a great question. So this device is on continuously. This device, Bluetooth is off when it's on your body.
And if
So
you're only listening to the audio, he held up his phone first and then he held up the Ring device.
yeah, the ring, the Bluetooth is off when it's on your body, a man's body. So there's no radiation while it's recording. The sensors are on, it's recording, but the sensors don't produce any radiation whatsoever. And then when you are done, you turn off the recording, and then you turn the device on again to upload the data. So there's no radiation while it's on your body. And in light of our discussion just before we got on with you, that's the number one error that men make when they first use the device. They don't understand that it's off when it's on the body. So we were actually, in order to comply with regulations in Europe, we had to have this message that says the device is unpaired but recording. By unpaired, we mean it's unpaired from the phone. That was the language that the regulators choose. And there's 8% of men who buy our technology don't understand. They see the word unpaired and they think it's not working, but it is working.
Ah, I see. Okay. I could see how that could be confusing,
Yes.
but yeah. All right. Well, Dr. Justin, I have two closing questions for you, but before I ask them, where can the listeners go to learn more about your work and to get their hands on this product?
Sure. You go to myfirmtech, myfirmtch.com. If you want to, you can contact me personally at Elliot, ELLIOT, at myfirmtech.com.
Your first question is, what is your number one health tip? So that could be diet and nutrition, it could be mindset, physical, emotional, the one piece of advice you would like everyone to know.
I think people should try to have an orgasm a day. I think an orgasm a day probably keeps the doctor away. And if people are underutilizing sexual pleasure for their health, because it has an impact on our cycle, on our mental health, on our heart health, on our immune system. People are underutilizing that. They need to plan for pleasure. They need to get back into it. Just the way if someone was out of condition, they wouldn't just go to the gym and think, oh, gee, what am I going to do today? No, people want to get into condition. They work out with a trainer or they have a plan. They have a whiteboard. Now, I'm not suggesting people get a whiteboard in their bedroom. Well, that might be fun, but people need to incorporate regular sexual activity into their lives in order to enjoy life as it should be enjoyed.
Mm. I noticed you said to have an orgasm, you didn't say to have sex. So for the single listeners, sex toys and just solo.
Yeah, I look. One thing that's really interesting, being in the space now for several years and speaking to customers and patients, is that whereas the movies and even the doctors in the way in which they assess sex, they emphasize penetrative sex, but that's not what most people are doing. Even couples, it's not especially what all couples are doing. That might be part of the play, but it's not the end all and be all.
Mm. Your last question is going to be a more personal question. You choose a number 1 through 100 and it will correlate to the question. You cannot pick 77.
16.
16. How do you approach forgiveness?
Well, it depends on what I'm forgiving. So I look, life involves a lot of friction, and it's always going to be this discrepancy between what we like from other people and how they actually treat us. I think we need to be very, very generous and very, very forgiving of most of the friction of life. On the other hand, there are certain acts that are so heinous, like torture, that they're unforgivable. But I think I need to, we need to approach that with humility and recognize that what we should aspire to do unto others as we'd have to do unto us. People are self-interested and will frequently rub us the wrong way, but we need to recognize that we do the same as well too, and we really need to be good-hearted about forgiving most things. My wife and I, we probably shout at each other a couple of times a day, but then we just move on. There's collecting grievances, holding on to grievances is a disaster in relations.
Yeah, well said. Dr. Justin, this has been a very fun and informative conversation. I think this is the first time I've ever said erection on the podcast. So thank you for that. This will be really great for the listeners. Like I told you before we started, I love anything health related where we can track things and get to the bottom, get to the root cause and learn more about our health. So thank you for doing what you're doing. And thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for the opportunity, Jessica. There are two things I didn't mention, that you asked me about, like what have I discovered? Well, I'm going to tell you right now because
I edit. I can put it in there.
Yeah. So men, there are two things that men complain about women that they don't want to tell their partners about. These are older couples. One is, I don't get enough friction when I'm having, penetrative sex. Men don't say penetrative, they say fucking, but men don't get enough. I'm getting enough friction. Well, I've experienced that in my own marriage. I'm married 37 years, and happily married for 36 to 37 years. But my wife's had 3 kids. She's 70 years old. There's nothing she can do about the fact that her vaginal muscles it doesn't in the space just doesn't give me friction. Guys don't want to tell it to their partners because kind of buzzkill. Hey, your pussy's too loose. The other one is boredom. No guy wants to tell his partner that the missionary position is utterly boring to me, turns me off, or whatever it is, doggy style. But this type of things going on in guys' minds that gives them ED, and they don't want to talk about it. I mean, I never thought about those factors alone. In retrospect, it's opposite, and women have the complaints about men as well too. I'm not, that's but they're often along the same lines. He wants the same thing all the time.
Yeah.
How many blowjobs can I give in a lifetime? that type of thing. So, but that's where the ring is really helpful.